this presentation, we will discuss the concepts that make a strong summary. Now, first, what is a summary? A summary is a condensed version of another work. So, for example, a larger work might be a movie, a book chapter, or an interview that you are condensing down. So maybe a couple of paragraphs. And it condenses the information into a couple of sentences. Sometimes in assignments, you're going to be asked to develop a summary over a historical piece or over a movie. It might be an entire paper, or it might be one segment of a paper. These are the components that compose a good summary. A good summary contains the name of the author and the title of the resource, both in the summary paragraph and in the works cited page. It makes sense, right? If you're going to summarize a resource, then you should put that into the works cited. In the summary paragraph, it might just be the simple naming of the author or the artist or the work that you are studying, and that will do for your citation. The elements of the summary would include the main idea, thesis, or premise of the work. So what is the central idea that this author is putting forth in this work? What are the main support points? And that is dependent upon how economical your author was in being able to communicate the main ideas, or how long your work is. A more extensive project like a book might require a larger number of support points in order to complete the summary, whereas a simple essay might just have 2 or 3 support points. The last component is a maybe. Some of your instructors will require that you put a direct quote into your summary and that you cite that direct quote with a page number. However, not all instructors are going to ask you to do that. Some will be just fine with those other components. So make sure that you communicate with your instructor and ask if a direct quote will be required in that summary. What does a summary not do? A summary should not contain any of your interpretation. A summary takes a text, puts it into your own words, but it doesn't mean that you get to put your own spin on that summary. So make sure that you are only representing the ideas or the analysis or the concepts from the work itself. You also cannot borrow the same words and phrases from the original. You cannot use direct sentences unless, of course, you are using a direct quote if your instructor allows that. So you need to make sure that you paraphrase the thesis and the main points very carefully. I've drawn for you a basic summary template that you might use. So at the opening of your paragraph, and typically a summary paragraph will be the second paragraph of a paper if it's required, I have my students sometimes incorporate it into their introductions and sometimes incorporate them into the second body paragraph of the paper. You can use this template whether you need to put it in the introduction or whether it is a standalone paragraph. Makes sense to name your author and the title of the work that you are studying in that first sentence. And so you need to provide a good overview sentence to break into or transition into the summary. The next sentence typically clarifies what the author's thesis is. And if you need a little bit more description to flesh that out, you can write one sentence, you could write 2 or 3 sentences. It shouldn't get too large because you also need to state the main points of the author's argument. And so that might actually duplicate some of what you're writing with the thesis. Of course, if you are offering a direct quote, that might fit somewhere between the author's thesis and some of the main points that you are communicating. But again, ask your instructor if that's required. And with any good paper where you are studying another work, make sure that you have the work named in the works cited page. This is just a basic template of a book citation, but whether you're summarizing a journal article or a magazine article or newspaper article, an internet site, a movie, or any other resource, a work of art, make sure that you follow the guidelines in order to cite that in the works cited page. And that sums up our discussion of summary.